this video is concerned with a very homogeneous background. I start, as I always do, with a light, slightly dull, brownish yellowish wash and let it dry. Now the next layer is done quite uniformly. I cover both the floor and the dragon. Normally I use an approach that does these things separately. In here I really wanted to tie everything together in a kind of uniform colour scheme, not have anything stand out too much. And so I treat it all as one thing. The inside of the wing is allowed to be a bit darker already. More darks will come later. But for the rest, I really treat this as one sort of flat thing. In the columns, I don't use a lot of detail, just a bit of variation where the light falls and where the shadows would be. I don't want them to distract from the foreground, so a bit of detail is fine, but not too much. There's a doorway there. Some white edges are allowed to to stay where they would be a bit lighter. Some are yellow from the glow from the gold. More dark in the doorway and on top there. I add some structure to the arches where the bricks would be. And here we go with the wing, a bit redder than the background, but still not too much variation. It's a huge flat area, and I don't want that to dominate the piece too much. Now I really start detailing little bits and pieces across the entire picture here and there. I usually make sure I step back every once in a while, look at the piece with fresh eyes and decide where do I need darker shadows, bit by bit, not too much all at once. So now the darker shadows come, a drop shadow under him, and also in the scales you can see I'm going for a bit of a lost edges look there with his back foot, and some more darks are allowed in the inside of his wing where there really won't be any light, and his arms. Scales, by the way, are an insane amount of fun to paint, but that can be quite dangerous because you get so carried away with detailing each one and knowing exactly where the light will be, so there's always the danger of over-rendering. I do allow myself to render a lot of detail in the dragon's head because that's where you really want it, where you want the eye to dwell for a while, but you don't really want it to dwell on the neck. So I go for slightly less detail in those beautiful scales than I could have, and I have in the past definitely over-rendered some dragons, and I was being very careful not to do that here. Some more shadows to add some weight to him. Some shadows to the gold. And some more red for the tail. Bit of detail work in his paw. And as you can see, definitely more detail in the head. I'm building this up very slowly, making sure I don't lose myself in any area, because that's where over-rendering happens. So I add one light layer of shadow and then another light layer of shadow, so I can always step back and see when it's enough, because if you find it would have been enough half an hour ago, that's usually where you have to scrap a piece. Some detail in the treasure on the ground, that's the necklace of Girion there. Some vases in the foreground, a cup, probably not the cup that Bilbo will be stealing, because it would take a great amount of courage to steal a cup right from the dragon's claw. Some more darks for the wing. Again, I have seen that this can handle a bit of more shadow, so I add it. A bit of detail for the scales to determine the volume of the body. Sorry. And just a bit of more detail in the scales, because they are so much fun. And more detailing for the gold. You can really see me hopping across the piece here. In this case, of course, I'm painting the jewels in a bit of a teal color, so bluish, greenish, and detailing the treasure a bit more. But I don't really want the treasure to distract the eye. Now the outside of the wing is detailed with rather little detail again, just a bit of the structure with the bones sticking out just a little, and a bit of a scaly texture on the outside, but not too much, because as I said, I don't want the eye to keep staring at a highly detailed wing when there's so much more interesting stuff going on. Another necklace. And tail scales. The tail scales, by the way, are based on an armadillo lizard, which have the most amazing scales, so I always look at those when I paint dragons. A bit more detail, a bit more darks in the wing and in the back columns as well. I'm already on the finishing touches by this point, really detailing everything that still needs to stick out a bit more. And being very careful at this point not to overdo it. Some very last detail with a colored pencil, and a bit in the gold, and then I'm almost ready for the gold leaf that I'm going to add. That's the sizing, the mixture. I painted on with a very, very thin brush on the gold coins that I want highlighted. I'm tracing a path from the bottom up there across the cup, and then through the gold up to his belly, where of course some of the gold will glisten, as the reader knows. This is the gold foil. It's 22 carat slightly reddish gold that I put on normally with a brush, but it just stuck to my fingers, so some fingers are involved. Now with a brush I apply it. It sticks to the mixture. It has been drying for about an hour after applying it, so I now use a quite soft brush to fix it off with the excess, and there we are.